Right, I'm on my way to go do another cam belt. So wet belt on a Peugeot 20208, I think it is. I was talking to my supplier the other day that supplied the cam belts, and apparently Peugeot have decided to go back to a 5W30 oil. I honestly don't think they know what they're doing at all. We've got a cam belt kit, crank, shaft, seal, inlet manifold, gaskets, and cam cover gasket. I'm not doing the water pump because I've said to the customer, the water pump is separate. It's not driven by the cam belt, so there's not really any need to do it. If it was a standard cam belt, then yeah, I'd advise to do the water pump at the same time, because purely if the water pump goes, then you've got to do the cam belt again. Whereas in this case, you don't have to do the cam belt again because it's not driven by the cam belt. So that's that. Obviously, we're taking the sump off as well and going to clean out the strainer because it's going to be full. I've already been out to the vehicle and tested it with the tool. The belt is excessively swelled and it's cracking a lot as well, so it needs doing. I think the vehicle's on 60 something thousand miles, so it is over its interval. But obviously it just started cracking before that anyway. So we're doing a service as well at the same time. It's overdue a service. They've chosen to go with a full service, so we're going to do oil and filter after we've taken the sump off and cleaned it out, and then we're going to do spark plugs, air and pollen as well. So at this point, I've already taken the battery out of the battery tray just to give that extra little room to bring the inlet manifold round, because it is a bit of a tight squeeze getting them out. And then getting the cam cover off. There's two different variations on these. One where you have to take the inlet manifold and cam cover off, and one where you don't, because the tools are slightly different and the setup is different on the engine. So there's the belt. Once the cam cover's off, you can see the cracks in the belt there. This is the width tool. So if we pop that across the belt should fit in between both of the edges, but it doesn't. So that means the belt is excessively swollen. See here, I'm just manipulating the cam belt. You can see the oil actually coming out in between the cracks. So that's the the crankshaft locking pin going in just behind the gearbox into the back of the flywheel. Just checking on the crank with a ratchet just to make sure it's locked in its position. This is the laser timing tool kit. So it comes with the camshaft locking tools, which is these two black pieces, and the top black pieces are all bolted together. The crank pin there, and then those other two blue parts are for the other variation of the engine that I was talking about in the other part, where the cam cover doesn't need to be removed and the tool goes in the crank still, but the cam locking tool is slightly different. They go in the end of the cams to lock them off. So that's the camshaft locking tool in there, and just pop some cam cover bolts back in the tool to lock it down properly. So now we can remove the idler gear through the access hole, which we've got a new gasket for as well, tensioner out as well. This is the belt once it's off. The belt is very cracked. Some of the teeth are really just about to come off, I think, on this belt. You can see if I zoom in on this crack here, that crack is nearly all the way through the belt. So it's really worn and needs changing. So if those teeth come off, then we've got timing issues, timing will go out, and we've got internal damage to the engine, which is the last thing we want. So that's the belt off. Unfortunately, I didn't record taking the crank sprocket out, so I'll make sure to include that when I put it back together. So this is just taking the crank seal out, so we need to replace that as well. Just pop it out with the seal removal tool. So if I just pause this here, you can see this is where the crank sprocket gear wheel comes out, And then it's a totally free floating pulley. There's no keyways. There's only a keyway from the outer hub to the oil pump sprocket. So that's all the parts out that we need to replace. So you can see here, this is the brand new belt. I've got the tool on there and it fits perfectly, just as it should. That's how the other belt should be. Obviously, it's swollen too much. So here we are replacing it. So I've already stripped it all down. We've got the new tensioner going in with the new idler. Just nipping those bolts up just so that they're snug. Gear wheel and crank pulley hub going back in. Free floating gear wheel for the belt. And then when we put the crank hub in, you can see the keyway there that slots into the crank and sandwiches that gear wheel when it's torqued up. So I put the bottom bolt in, the crank pulley bolt, just touching, so that when you tension the belt, it can pull the free floating gear wheel round so that everything's all timed up properly. So you can see the beige sort of little tab, brown tab there lined up with the face plate on the tensioner, so we know that we're tensioned up properly. So once everything fitted loosely, tighten the idler gear, then tension the belt, and then torque the crank pulley up to spec. This is a kit, new timing case access cover, gasket, new bolts, tensioner, idler gear, crankshaft seal and everything. So this is the crankshaft seal going in. I absolutely love this tool. Makes putting in these crank seals brilliantly. So that little plastic piece just helps guide it onto the hub itself. And then we've got the actual fitment tool. So this plate bolts onto the hub where the crank pulley bolts would normally go. These are the crank pulley bolts. And you can wind those in after you've partially fitted the seal. And then simple really, tighten the bolts up and it'll push the crank seal in nice and evenly to stop any tears or damage to the seal, and it'll put it in exactly where it needs to be. So they do go in a little bit further than flush, and this tool sets it perfectly to where the crank seal is supposed to be. So you can see that I'm just running my finger around the edge just to make sure that it is seated properly. So belt on, it's all tensioned back up, crank sprocket is back in, torque to spec, and we're just rotating the engine over 2 times, or at least 2 times, and then just popping the tools back on just to make sure that everything's timed up properly. So here we are, spinning the engine over, getting the cam tools back on, just a little belt tension test with my fingers on the belt, just a couple of lifts and slots back on just to make sure that everything's as it should be, and the crank pin is slotted back into the back of the flywheel as well. So we've got to build the rest of it back up. This is the second tool of this job that I absolutely love, which is the water pump stretch belt tool. So the water pump belt is on the inside of the crank on a separate belt. You just pop the tool onto the water pump pulley and then feed the belt on, and as you rotate the crank round with the crank pulley center bolt, it feeds the belt nicely onto the water pump. You just got to edge it around with your hands as well just to help it. And there we are, it's on. See that fin on the edge there, just pushes the belt onto the water pump. So you need, once it's on that far, you just need a couple more rotations just to feed it on that last bit, and there we are, popped on perfectly. It's a really handy tool to have, stops any struggling. Not sure if universal ones work, they probably do, but this is specific for this setup. Just gotta build back up. Gotta stop for some food first though, and a drink. It was 32 degrees when I was doing this job on this day, so I was very warm. So this is just doing the spark plugs, putting the battery tray back in, the ECU, the battery, and everything on that side of the engine, and there we are, all built back up. So the last bit now is just to take the sump off and see how much belt fibres and debris is in the sump, and I bet you there's going to be loads. Hello and welcome to the final part of this wet belt, cam belt replacement on this Peugeot 208. So the final section of this is to remove the sump and clean the sump out and the strainer of all the debris and belt fibres. The belt fibres degrade, it comes off of the belt, gets in the oil and then blocks the strainer, causing oil pressure issues. See, I've just taken all the bolts out of the sump. We're going to change that oil filter as well that's next to the sump. Just getting that little punch around the edge there. That's another tool that I like. The one just to break the sealant on one edge. Really handy tool. So if we have a look inside the sump, there's not actually any in there, which I suppose is good news, but wait till you see the strainer. So we get rid of the sump, go back underneath the car, have a look at the strainer, and fully blocked. Would you look at that? I'm very, very surprised that the oil pressure light wasn't on this. I don't know how, but that strainer is totally blocked. So let me just grab a screwdriver. There we are, and go back under and just give that strainer a little scrape. Look at it. It's disgusting. It's like a paste. It's thick and it's blocked the strainer totally. I don't know how oil's getting through there. I really don't. So anyway, on these, you can actually take the strainer off, unbolt it from the oil pump. This is the strainer once I'd unbolted it and given it a bit of a scrape, but then I've actually properly cleaned it. No point in replacing it because you can get all the belt fibres out. So that's how it should look. And this is another angle there. Oh, totally clean. See all the way through it, whereas before we couldn't. So I just need to clean the surfaces on the sump now. That's your strainer bolted back in, and then clean the surfaces of the sump, bolt it back up, pop the oil in, take it for a little road test, check it all over, and this one's good to go. Thanks for watching.